Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Ushma Tyagi and I shall be your host today. In episode 3 of season 5 of Strategizing Digital Dialogues webinar series, in association with Dell Technologies, Intel, and VMware, we are back to catch up with IT leaders and solution experts for a better appreciation of what goes into successful digital transformation. For the third and final episode of the series today, our webinar theme is Digital Business Platforms, the New Gateways to Success. That is, we will focus on how the convergence of business strategy and digital platforms can be a challenging journey, but one that must necessarily be undertaken to shape the enterprise of tomorrow. Identifying the variables within an organization that need to be coupled to be able to mesh digital strategy with physical operations in a seamless manner. Over the next 1 hour or so, you can expect to hear IT leaders and digital transformation experts share their insights and experiences from real life case studies and solutions implemented along with the resulting business benefits. Now, without further delay, I hand you over to Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, Chief Research Officer, Strategic Solutions, to take the floor, introduce our guest speakers, and glean key learnings and insights for you from the world of enterprise IT leaders. Over to you, Arjun.
Hello and good morning. I am Arjun Vishwanathan, and I today, in the Digital Dialogues, Season 5 and Episode 3, I'm going to be in conversation, and please put your hands together to welcome eminent folks from industry and none other than, in no specific order, Mansi Thapa, Global Information Security Head at the Jaguar Group. Mansi, delighted that you could join us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Arjun. My pleasure.
Absolutely. And Mitali Sharma, Head Risk, Compliance and Information Security at the SDG Corporation. Mitali, privileged that you're joining us. Thank you.
Thanks, Arjun. Thanks for having us here.
Thank you. Ladies, I'm going to directly kind of jump into it. A lot of analyst research reports, and I'm quoting one from the PricewaterhouseCoopers, says that 55% of enterprise executives plan to increase their cybersecurity budgets in 2021. And 51% of those respondents are adding full-time cybersecurity staff in 2021. Now, Mansi, if I may come to you with your permission first, as organizations now shift from traditional mindsets of threat prevention to a more active threat detection and rapid preemptive response, how, in your view, have events of the ecosystem globally as well as in India over the last 12 to 15 to 18 months perhaps acted as a natural catalyst for organizations to now transform their cyber resilience efforts? Mansi Thapa.
Yeah, very nice question, Arjun. So basically, first and foremost, I feel that where the security was placed in the organization has really changed in the last 15 months or in last 3 years, I would say. Like you would agree that, words like hacking, words like viruses, worms, it was only, an IT subject. IT people used to know these words, but now you talk to a 13-year-old, they know what this is. So that is what, so that is the reason it has really, built up into the fabric. And I'm sure Mitali would agree with me that the projects which we were struggling to get approved in these last 15 months, we got those approved, plus we got budgets as well. Thirdly, I would say that in these 15 months, the security people, we see a lot of importance being given to them from the side of the board. Like, our board wants to know what's happening, which was not there, earlier, maybe months and 6 months, we used to report what's happening, but now it is a boardroom topic, especially not even COVID. I would say now because of this privacy laws which are coming in, a lot has changed. They want to know whether we are compliant or not. Like in manufacturing setup, there are not many compliances. In banks and insurance, there's a lot of compliances. So they really need to work on security. But for us, we are getting so much importance where security is concerned. We have got budgets to hire people. We have deployed a lot of new products. So I would say the whole thing has shifted completely. And last but not the least, I see a dearth in skills which are there overall globally. If you want people, to get hired, it's getting very difficult to get good players in the market. And plus, yes, there are 500 plus more vendors from which we need to choose from in these last 15 months. The landscape has really increased where the partners are concerned.
I'm going to thank you. That was quite powerfully articulated. Mitali, I'm going to bring that to you. Mansi very, very powerfully articulated the fact that resilience, and I'm counting security as part of or the subset of enterprise-wide resilience. Resilience has now become a boardroom subject. In fact, it's already become a boardroom agenda. In that kind of a concept, how have you seen strategic shift in the very way cyber resilience or enterprise resilience has been approached?
So again, I would say, like Mansi said, it's a very good question and a very good topic that you have actually picked up. So see, every organization was striving towards being cyber resilient from a very long time. Like whether it was, I think that's the reason why so many vendors are there out there in the market, because every CISO was having one or the other box in their data centers, whether it is AV, EDR, you name it, and you will have all of those together. Uh, I think that cyber resilience journey that is still there. With COVID and with this pandemic, with these data regulation laws and all of that that have come up in the last couple of years, I would say, or 3 years, um, the shift has become like, it has accelerated a lot. Like digital transformation journeys which were taking ages to happen, that have happened. From the old school of thought, people were, a little bit hesitant to have their employees work remotely, but now they don't have any choice. COVID brought in that digital transformation, that remote working. So whether you want to do it or you don't want to do it, if you want to stay in the business, you have to, shift to remote working. A lot of people were not transitioning to cloud. I was looking at it from 4 to 5 years, people talking about, we want to do cloud transformation, how do we start, where do we start? Suddenly in the last 1 year, everybody is transforming to cloud, and there are so many cloud vendors that have emerged, there are so many applications that have emerged. Or you look at the comprehensive security, where we used to talk about that, do a risk, I mean, whenever we used to talk theoretically, we used to say, do a risk assessment of your landscape, define controls which are, based on the risk assessment. uh, all of that theoretical thing has become practical now, because when this entire remote working concept came in, and when everybody had to transform from being a organization which was in-housed in a particular perimeter to this remote working environment, everybody had to do their risk assessment, look at those tools which were really important, assess the need, and then only have those controls in place. Why do you want to have a data center and spend, millions on that when everybody is working remotely? What will you do with that infrastructure?
Well, I'm going to hold you on to that, Mitali, with your permission, because I think you just brought out a fascinating point, and I'm going to bring that to Mansi. Mansi, the fact that the workplace, so to say, stands decomposed today is an established fact. And Mitali just mentioned that, look, with earlier there used to be risk and compliance assessments, but those were within the geographical perimeters of what you would or I would call office. Today, that stands completely decomposed. It stands completely destroyed. And each person, wherever, or each employee, wherever he or she is the office by itself. Now, in that kind of a scenario, Mansi, how challenging does it become? And or what opportunities do you see to transform this humble sentinel called the endpoint, my laptop, a PC in somebody else's case, into your first line of defense?
Yeah, so I would say, Arjun, that everything in security, whether it has a perimeter, doesn't have a perimeter, it will be protected if there are three things: people, process, and technology all working together. But yes, as you rightly said, now my endpoint is the first level of defense. Earlier, we used to say that my employee is my first level of defense and the weakest one. But now we have added on to it, saying that his endpoint is also your, weakest link. So I would say that yes, what we also did, we also faced a lot of challenges. You can understand that from zero work from home policy, we moved to 100 work from home, 100% work from home in a span of 4 days in March last year. But I think we were blessed that we had a lot of processes which were already in place, which a lot of manufacturing companies did see. So once and foremost, I would say for endpoint protection, what we really need is a very good cloud-based EDR solution, which has a very central man. See, I would say, the endpoint protection which we are looking at, we used to say not only attacks should be prevented before causing harm and not detected after causing harm, but the solution should do so without adding significant management overhead. That is something which we now need to understand. It should be, in a very automated MIL way, so that my team is not occupied. They don't need to do something very different, which now they need to learn. It should be very, very, the management overhead has to go. So that is something which you really need to look at. One is that. Second, of course, the training for your team. That was the biggest challenge you can understand in manufacturing. But yes, we took out a lot of innovative ways. We do a lot of simulation testings. How we send a spam across, which is not a spam, but to understand that whether people understand that or not. So one is that the trainings really need to work on that. There's something which you really need to work out so that even if your resources connected to a BYOD model, that they're bringing their own device, but they are also, they know that something might go wrong, so where to test it. They are my first line of defense. So that is something very important. Third is processes. You have a very good, tool in place. You have very good people in place, but what kind of processes you have enforced so that, people know that what will happen if something goes wrong and where to reach out to.
So I think that is very, very important. And that's precisely what I'm going to bring to you, Mitali, is that I think Mansi explained it very beautifully, saying these are three pillars in the journey of building better resilience within organizations. But I have a further follow-up question, which is how, and we've got a wonderful audience tuning and listening to us today. How would you advise them to even approach the journey? What is the starting point? Because both of you have very powerfully articulated the fact that traditional mindsets are now a thing of the past. It's equally incumbent upon us, perhaps, to guide them on where to even begin. Mitali, Sharma.
So, like Mansi rightly said, endpoint has become the first line of defense, and rather than employees, it's the endpoint. So, I would agree to that. I mean, the focus has shifted from that network resilience and network security to endpoint security and endpoint resilience. So, it is very important that my endpoints are resilient. But having said that, we don't want to load the endpoint in such a manner that, let's say, if somebody wants to do something on the endpoint, like I am the employee, and it adds to my frustration that I'm not able to fetch a data, or I'm not able to fetch some information when it is really needed. My system doesn't work, my demo doesn't work when at the time it is it has to work. Because if you are transitioning everything to cloud, you're doing it just to make it faster. But at the end of the day, if it is not getting that faster, I'm not getting that flexibility, then uh, that endpoint security is of no use, because it is adding to my frustration of my means the employee, and it is actually depreciating my performance. It is not giving me the performance or the operational excellence that I was looking at in the organization. That way, that remote working will not last for a longer time, or it will not be sustainable for the organization. It will not be operational. So I think the first and the foremost thing is to assess the need of how much security and what security you really need. What is it that I want to protect? How much do I need to protect? So first you identify your crown jewels, do a risk assessment around it, and identify what exactly is needed. Maybe there is a certain segment of systems which does not need DLP, so why do you want to put it under DLP? Certain segments may need, somebody who is having a financial data, who is working on those financial data, may need much more protection than an employee who is just maybe accessing through VDI and just getting doing some operation. Why do you want to give that person all of that AV, DLP, EDR, all of that stuff, so that at the end of the day, that person only needs a thin client where they can go through VDI and just do their operation, and that's it. So you are actually looking at what is needed, where it is needed, how it is needed, and then start the implementation journey. That what are the vendors that I want to select, how agile, how flexible are those vendors which I am selecting, how much secure it is. Let's say if I transitions from remote working to office space, or I do the back transition, how much will that technology be flexible enough? Or is it that today it is okay, but tomorrow when I start working again from my premises, everything else changes? I again have to revisit the vendor or pay additional charges. And also all of those things, I think, to start with, that is what is needed. And then it is very important that the employee, whom we term as the weakest link, who is at that end point, make that person the custodian of information security. That person should be equally responsible for information security as much as I am. So information security is, or information security policy should not be the responsibility of only the compliance team or the governance team. It should be the responsibility of each and every person. And has to be built into their KRA or performance appraisal at some point of time. Otherwise, you cannot make them responsible for that.
That's a fascinating point. Mansi, can I bring a byline of a thought process to you? Mitali very beautifully articulated the fact that everybody is going to be the custodian within the organization of security. And at one point of time, it used to be culture, it used to be vision, it used to be the mission, it used to be values. I'm moving a step further. In a remote work kind of in an ecosystem such as that, how do you ensure adequate protection of the endpoint in a manner that is collaborative between the organization and the employee, yet not stifle the very important imperatives today of collaboration and the ability to innovate to drive hyper competitiveness?
Yeah.
It's a how do you bring convergence between adequate security and being able to drive agility, innovation, and seamless collaboration in the truest sense?
Yeah. So Arjun, I would always say that at the end of the day, we all are working for the business.
Indeed.
So all the policies, process, and all the tools you are implementing, first and foremost, you need to see that the business should always function. That is something the CISO should always have at the back of his or mind. Secondly, I always say that I always ask that what do brakes do to a car? So mostly people say that it helps you stop. I said no, they give you speed, right?
Indeed.
So that is what security is for an organization, especially with this digitalization happening and stuff like that. So as Mitali rightly said, build this feeling inside the organization, have that culture. You call it culture, you call it, responsibility of the end user, anybody. First and foremost, this culture needs to be there that security is something which helps me. It is not a policing thing which is there. So once that culture is there, you would see that people and second is of course, as Mitali said, the executive buying. If you have actually informed the top level that what you are trying to achieve, sell security as a service. Don't do it, just do it, and then when they come to a stop, they come to you and then you tell, yes, I have done this change in your system. Educate them, give it as a service. Say, see, this is what I'm giving, so this will help you protect whatever critical work you're doing, like my costing department. We had put a lot of controls on them earlier when we were very scared that what will happen. But once we explained it to them that what is the importance of the data they are holding, and at working from home how it can be breached, you won't believe, Arjun, it's amazing that all the heads call me now and tell me, Mansi, we have done this, is this okay, or you want me to do something more? So if I think training plays a big role, sell it as a service, don't sell it as a policing thing. I know Mitali also that it's very important that some kind of that fear should be there that what will happen if I do something wrong. But I'm off a different concept. I say that try to build that relationship with the team so that they come to you if something goes wrong, rather than they get scared that you might get penalized because of it, and you will see the difference. For remote working, I think that is the best thing. Get the top buy-in, and then flow whatever you're doing, do as much communication as you can, and that this is what it's going to do, and will really help you with it.
Interesting, because I do come now to one that part of the segment within this segment, where Mitali, I will come to you with a set of questions perhaps that will help drive a dialogue more around a more futuristic outlook of the whole concept of trust. And I obviously bring in the concept of the future of trust. And I bring to you a situation or an ecosystem that has the future of trust and the evolving tenets of the paradigms of future of trust. You have the digital workforce, the one that existed with or without the displacement of what we call the workplace. And you today also, and increasingly looking tomorrow, have this remote workforce. Underlying all of these are, of course, the standard business metrics: cost, revenue, returns, return on investment, profitability. However, other metrics that have also come in increasingly are rate of innovation, agility, hyper-competitiveness, new metrics of collaboration and productivity. Now, when you look at all of this, Mitali, in your view, and we'd love to hear your essential guidance to all of us who are listening in today and to the larger audience within Indian industry, how should organizations strategically approach the concept of the future of trust with the view that what lies ahead is perhaps unimagined realities? Mitali Sharma.
See, I would say you cannot move to a complete concept of zero trust when it comes to, when it comes to remote working. Uh, how much security can you expect from me when I'm working on a router, which is, somebody wireless is coming from somewhere or something? You cannot have that same kind of security which was there within the perimeter when I was there, that firewall, that everything. Yes, that does not mean that you leave everything aside and let people do whatever they want to do and say them that we trust you and we trust God, and we are trusting that there will be no data breaches. So no, not that. But yes, build in those layers of security which are really essential based on the kind of data that is there, based on the risk assessment that you have done for that. For now the shift has moved from doing a risk assessment of the network to doing the risk assessment of individual endpoints. Look at each of the endpoints and classify them. Like we used to do CIA rating of assets of, and critically we used to say servers, desktops, laptops. This is how we used to say. Now you have to go slightly deep inside that. Drill it down a little bit and go to each of those endpoints and see what is my endpoint accessing, what is the user behavior there, what kind of flexibility does my user need. Let's say if somebody in my organization wants to work in an IDM tool, which is probably a new tool in the market, and we see that access provisioning is the in thing in the market, and somebody has to work on it. You put in all those security controls over it that they cannot have that lab environment. Now you're killing the innovation big time. So how do you, you also need to look at what are those ways where I can tweak that security, still make it flexible and still make it secure, and give them those lab facility. If it requires having a separate endpoint, or if it requires giving them access on a personal personal desktop, personal laptop, do it. But that's how the organizations have to look at it when developing these remote workforce policies, because remote working is in to stay. It is not something that will come today and tomorrow it will go away. So how exactly you transition that remote working, make that more secure, make it more agile, is what is required. So you have all of that monitoring in place, but give security a little bit flexibility also in terms of who needs what, and then implement that. I think that is where a handshake between security innovation, that would be there, and it would drive operational excellence, and it will give better flexibility for the organizations to continue growing the way they want to do. Otherwise we will kill the innovation big time, just in the fear of getting breached or something. And as long as that uh, Mansi also said, as long as that employee is not connected with you, employee needs to feel connected, needs to feel custodian. When I meant having policies in place, I meant to have certain deterrent controls or disciplinary action policies, so that employee knows at the back of mind that if I do something wrong, I am the one who is responsible for any data which is there on my system. So if I'm getting hacked, if I'm getting breached for because of my actions, there will be a disciplinary action to me. But if I am getting breached just because I was doing some testing, then organization is with me also. So the policies have to be flexible enough
Okay,
in during
symbiotic
this remote
relationship.
working. Yeah, so to give that handshake.
I'll come to you with pretty much the same question because Nitali is fairly established in the fact that as we move forward, security has got to be equally agile. Uh, Mansi Thapar, I must ask you the same question. As you sit down with your team to plan for the future that lies ahead, one that may have realities that we've not yet hitherto perhaps been exposed to. How are you realigning as well as reimagining the whole concept of the future of trust for your organization as well as your essential guidance for industry as they stand at the cusp of what is clearly a revival and a resurgence and an acceleration of growth for Indian industry? Mansi Thapa.
Yeah, Arjun. So, one thing which I'm telling all my team members is always imagine that don't feel that you will never be breached. Think that you are breached, and now what is the plan we have in place? That is something I would say all the audience that this is what we need to think of. Yes, we have a good landscape. We do VAPTs every 3 months. We get new landscape, new problems. We fix them. That is a continuous journey that needs to happen. But now I think it's the time to build that. If my like in COVID, what happened? Nobody was even thought of that this thing can happen. But that is what cyber resilience is all about. That is the buzzword in 2021, rightly said. That you need to first, that is the thing with incident response planning. What do I have? If my critical assets goes down, what is the plan in place? That is something which I'm looking at the future. That what is that is my future of trust. As with Ali, I think she has covered everything. And I would again say that people, process, and technology, they all need to work together. But yes, I would add to that is that I should have that kind of security in place, that kind of tools, the people and process in place, that 70% of the breaches, which are very general breaches, if you look at most of the breaches which are happening, they could have fixed by a simple patching, or it could have been fixed by just by a human error not happening. So that should not be there in my organization. Those 70% should automatically take care of, and my team should only focus on the top 30%, which comes from which are not there, which is something which is new has come up, which we need to do that. So that kind of tools we should look at. So like clouds, like we're talking about endpoint solution. I'll give you an example. Now there are many cloud-based solutions available in the market, which has very good EDRs in place, which get so do they get updated automatically? Is their management very simple? Do they take in human behavior, as Mitali said, and understand using AI ML, and they just stop? They automatically contain the system. I don't need to manually, go and contain it. So that is what we need to focus on. 70% automation at least, that all my security problems get sorted at that level. And 30%, yes, like she said, like if I want to create a lab, that yes, we are so approachable that people come to me, they tell me that this is what I want to do, please open this. So I should have all the means to set that up. That kind of agility is required.
Interesting, interesting. And my last question, I do have a view on the clock, ladies, but I'm going to sneak in one last question. I'm going to kind of going to make this anecdotal. Back in the day, there used to be this very famous statement that said, as far as security is concerned, there are two kinds of organizations: those that have had the security breached, and the second kinds of organizations being those that do not know that the security has been breached. In that kind of a scenario, uh, Mitali, I would like to ask you, for the larger audience here, what are the opportunities that one could unlock as enterprises if cyber resilience and cybersecurity were to be given its true merit and done in a strategic and comprehensive manner?
So, a slightly tricky question, I would say. But if an organization is cyber resilient and cyber secure, then I think the risk of not having a data breach will not be zero. That risk will still be there. But then the organization becomes much more agile, much more flexible. Geographically, it becomes even more easier to spread across geographies, because you have this remote working concept and you are resilient. You have built in that culture within the organization of becoming cyber resilient. You have those policies, and like Mansi said, it is very important at this point of time. You have those incident response plans and your business continuity plans in place, that if tomorrow there is a breach, what will I do to become more cyber resilient? How do I it is okay to get breached, but do I have that mechanism in place that I can come back and resume all the services, and how much time will I take to do it? How much flexible I am? So if an organization is cyber resilient, if an organization is cyber secure, it opens up a wide range of opportunities for the organization. That's what I feel. You give flexibility to employees. Operationally, you are much more. You the cost saving is also there, because you don't have to have bigger buildings. Look at some of the organizations who have actually, they were not doing a lot of remote working, but today if you look in the newspapers, they have announced that we want our employees, our 70% of workforce, to continue remote working till the end of their life, or what, till the time they want to do it. So we are open to do it. So that is the kind of flexibility that will be there. It will be a forward approach for the organizations. And uh, I have really seen a lot of work coming from on-site to offshore, and the demand for security professionals increasing since the time COVID has come up. So that's what I am seeing. So like Mansi also said that, we are not able to get many security professionals. So I think one of the reasons is because all of them are already consumed in the market, and it opens up a market where we need more and more professionals. So in India, we need more people in security.
Indeed.
So that's how I feel.
That is very powerful. Mansi, I come to you now in conclusion with one important question that I would like you to address in terms of your articulation, perhaps as a veteran industry practitioner. a couple of big bets around cyber resilience, cyber security, future of trust that you feel industry is going to pivot, unlocking value on in the years ahead as an observer of industry?
Yeah, so one will be one which I feel is very big is going to privacy, where the privacy laws are coming in. So you'll see a lot of skills being developed on privacy, lot of tools which will be developed to how to manage privacy in corporates, which are just one or two tools are available right now. So that is something, a big opportunity people are banking on. Second is, like, of course, a lot of educational institutes have now started up bringing a lot of security programs in. So that is something which is a very good thing which is happening, and in India I'm seeing a lot of them. So that is something in future I really feel. Yeah, Arjun,
Well, very,
I think.
poignant also, because I think you touched upon a couple of very, very important trends that are going to define the robustness and the overall intrinsic strength of Indian industry as we chug along towards what promises clearly to be a very, very bright and a promising future. But ladies, that pretty much is what we have time for in this segment. Mansi, Mitali, it has honestly been nothing short of a privilege having had this dialogue with you. The wealth of experience and the views that you've shared have been par excellence, and I'm sure the audience, as well as I for sure, stand much the better for it. So thank you so much. We're very grateful.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Arjun.
Arjun.
It was our pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, same
Thank you.
here. Thank you.
And for the audience, I, Arjun Vishwanathan, was in conversation with Mansi Thapar and Mitali Sharma on the concepts of defending the unknown, cybersecurity today, tomorrow, and after. Stay tuned with us. We'll be back with the next segment in just less than a minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Arjun, for engaging our IT leader guests in an insightful panel discussion on their experiences with furthering their digital transformation journey. Dear delegates, do remember to fill out the feedback form at the end of today's webinar episode. Your feedback is invaluable as it helps us improve the content, structure, and presentation of our webinars and virtual conferences. In keeping with the theme of today's episode, Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, Chief Research Officer, Strategic Solutions, will engage in a conversation with the experts on how organizations must rethink not just their operating models, but also perhaps their very existence as they forge powerful growth oriented journeys forward in uncertain times. How to build a robust technology backbone that will play the anchor role for digital platforms to deliver on their promise of value. What governance and technology modernization is required, and how it must be systematically identified and planned in a time bound manner. Over to you, Arjun.
Hello and good morning. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, and today I'm going to be in conversation with two very, very eminent subject matter experts from industry, as it were, to discuss a topic that is pivotal to the sheer existence, perhaps, of Indian industry and global industry by itself. But today, we are going to be in conversation on Indian industry alone. And the topic or the subject that is so pivotal and that merits such importance is cybersecurity and the subsequent endpoint security to allow organizations to defend against the unknown. Uh, it, it's fairly clear that where enterprise agility and velocity were at one point in time in life very desirable, they have now become essential and imperative pretty much to the existence of organizations by themselves. Agility across the whole enterprise combines speed and stability and strives to drive performance and value inflection. But having said that, the ability to be resilient is an important pillar that which, if it were not to be fulfilled, would threaten, like I mentioned, the very existence of Indian industry and organizations by themselves. And to discuss this, please join me and put your hands together to welcome two very, very eminent folks, and in no particular order. J.R. Balaji, Head of Product, Endpoint Security and Manageability at Dell Technologies. JRB, thank you for joining us. Sheer privilege.
Happy to be here.
Absolutely, and we are particularly thankful, folks in the audience. JRB joins us all the way from Austin in Texas, and he's working in a different time zone. So thank you, Balaji. Very, very grateful. And Usman Zaman, Senior Solutions Engineer, VMware for the SAARC region. Usman, welcome. Very, very grateful that you could make time out from what we know is an extremely busy schedule at your end.
Thank you, Arjun. My pleasure.
Absolutely. And gentlemen, given the subject, let me directly dive into this. And Balaji, if I may be allowed to come to you, this whole concept of enterprise resilience um, has been well quite often touted. But would one be correct in assuming that resilience now certainly carries a very foundational pillar of security, without which enterprises perhaps shouldn't even be looking at accelerating growth and value and innovation? J.R. Balaji.
Absolutely. In fact, we cannot have this conversation without taking a little look back at how cybersecurity has evolved over time, right? Um, you know, Oftentimes people talk about the defense in depth concept in cybersecurity. The way the industry interpreted is like, okay, we have a cybersecurity problem, we throw a tool at it. The industry progressed like that for past couple of decades, I would say. What eventually ended up happening was that organizations ended up with this plethora of tools that were not necessarily talking to each other. It made the security posture complex, and after all of that, they still could not stop data breaches from happening, for example. To me, the concept of resilience is very important, and I look at resiliency as when you do not just bolt on solutions for the sake of it, but you are inherently building in security into everything that you do. Whether it is adding solutions and capabilities on a piece of hardware, for example, having the right hygiene, having the right automation, putting more power in the hands of IT, all of that builds resiliency. Now, this does not mean there is no bolt on top of that. There is going to be always a stack of solutions. There is no magic bullet or cookie cutter in cybersecurity. I think that's a fact that we all can agree on. With that said, how can we simplify, add more resiliency into the organization's infrastructure by building in security as the products are built? I think that's going to be a key ingredient of how we think about cybersecurity, right? And one of the roles that we look at Dell often is from an endpoint perspective. We also take the that how can we harden the device itself so that it inherently makes it more secure to do business.
Fascinating point, because Usman, with your permission, if I could come to you.
Yeah.
Balaji made a very pertinent point about hardening the endpoint by itself. Now, we just heard in the segment prior to us, while we were speaking, our CISO friends from industry talking about how the physical workspace stands decomposed today. And what is prevalent today is the digital workforce, one that is displaced across geographies. Now, in that kind of a scenario, how important do you think cybersecurity by itself and endpoint security? How important does it become, and how, in your view, should organizations look to fashion the security paradigms or the strategies? Because, see, at the end of the day, there's tons of data being created per day of productivity. That data is going to become capital. That capital is going to become a strategic business asset. If that were to be compromised, it threatens the very sheer existence or the brand of the organization. How do you kind of see it from your vantage point at VMware? Usman Zaman.
Yeah, I think it's a valid point because the boundaries have dissolved, right? There's no comfort zone or a secure perimeter within which endpoints are working today. And a lot of these organizations were not even ready for this solution. When the pandemic hit, they were actually pushed into going distributed. People are working from home. They have a varied set of endpoints. Today, a mobile can be an endpoint. You have different operating systems, different patch levels. So it's absolutely critical that you have a tool in place which works across these different kinds of endpoints, and it's able to not just configure and secure these endpoints, but also uh, has security built into it. And that is where products like Workspace ONE from VMware come in, where you have a single unified tool to secure all kinds of endpoints, and you don't have to have siloed solutions that are giving you different kinds of information, because what CISOs are struggling with today is also making sense of all the telemetry and information that is coming from different kinds of products. They don't want suggestions. They want actionable insights onto what you have to do. And I think, we are in a very unique position because of the kind of visibility into different types of control points where we can provide that kind of intelligence to the security teams.
Bala, JRB, I'm going to come to you. Very interesting point that Usman made, about CISOs or IT heads being or necessarily having to work with tons of areas of new data creation. Now, JRB, if I were to look at you and in your essential guidance to this wonderful audience that's tuning in today, how and where should organizations even start putting together a journey that is seamless, comprehensive, yet robust? What's your advice?
Great question, Arjun. Thanks for asking that and giving me the opportunity. I think I would start with business imperative, right? I think we talk about this all the time. So the cybersecurity has become not just the responsibility of the security organization, it's an imperative for boards across the companies. With that being the case, my advice to organizations always is start with what is your business priority? What is the most critical piece of information or pieces of information that an organization is trying to protect? Where do those live, right? That's one way to look at making sense of this complex cybersecurity landscape, but making it apply to a specific company or the industry, right? That's the one part of it. The other side of looking at it is looking at the security maturity, right? It's important for every, and agree or not, every organization is is in its own journey on the cybersecurity maturity, and that's based on a lot of different factors. Uh, there are frameworks you can look at. NIST cybersecurity framework is very popular. There is a CIS framework that organizations can look at. Frameworks are good. What I call checklist to see, hey, these are all the potential areas of opportunity or potential vulnerabilities that organizations need to account for. There's also I also highly recommend customers look at the MITRE framework. MITRE framework is basically a neutral framework that takes basically all kinds of threats that are out there and maps it across, I think, 13 different categories and multiple subcategories underneath each of that. So one way for an organization to see, hey, am I where do I fall in the spectrum of cybersecurity maturity is to basically either look at the framework or look at a MITRE framework, which is even simpler to say, what these are the type of threats that my organization is likely to face. How do I fare against that? So I think looking at their own business imperative, what are the critical pieces of information they're trying to protect? What do they owe to their shareholders and their customers? And then looking at from the other end of, okay, what is an ideal cybersecurity posture or cybersecurity maturity, maybe a good starting point.
Very, very interesting. Usman, if I may come to you, same question, of course, but I'm also going to, I'd be very grateful if you could kind of delve slightly deeper into this whole concept that the first, of course, is GRB's clearly said, look at it from the evolution of your organization's need and your own ability to have matured to that point. But fundamentally, whether it's cybersecurity or endpoint security, you are fundamentally defending against what you don't know, perhaps, that is out there. Of course, there's tons of data to point to what we do know, but what we don't know is certainly what we don't know. In that kind of a scenario, and I must seek your answer to this from VMware's perspective as well as in your partnership with Dell. How do you create robust security paradigms and frameworks without necessarily stifling productivity, collaboration, and innovation, which today all the more is prevalent because of the displaced workforce that we have or the digital workforce that we have? Usman Zaman.
Yeah. So it's absolutely imperative to know where your critical data lies, where your crown jewels are. And at the same time, you cannot have a blanket policy for all different types of assets, right? And that's where these guidelines like NISTs and CIS, they help you sort of see where you are and help you sort of build a vision of where you want to go. But as you said, every organization has its own need, every department, every type of endpoint has its own needs. So you need a very flexible solution. that is able to take care of all these different kinds of requirements, because you don't want to have multiple products, multiple consoles to manage different kinds of workloads and endpoints, etc. And what VMware is trying to do is get a unified solution, and that is basically our answer to these kind of complex requirements. And you don't want to bombard the security teams with different kinds of information and different kinds of telemetry. You basically want to give them actionable insights into what they need to do, how they need to manage the different kind of information that is being thrown at them, basically.
That's
If I
very
may, if I may
please,
chime in,
please do, JRB.
yeah, if I may chime in there, Usman brings up a very important point. If you take the two keywords, unification as well as telemetry,
Yeah.
I tell this to customers all the time. If you look at every customer must be thinking like this: okay, I've got all these different tools. I could buy more tools. It's going to cost me more money. But I see the biggest of the biggest organizations having data breach every other day. So, is there a solution at all to all these problems, right? I think the way the industry is maturing, I think, and I say this, the difference between an organization that can defend itself better and an organization that may not be able to defend itself better is purely going to be based on their ability to harness telemetry and be able to analyze and take rapid action. The reality we all live in is that there is always going to be a bad actor coming into your environment at some point or the other. That by itself is bad, but what is worse is not knowing that somebody is in your environment for months together. If you look at the anatomy of all the major data breaches over the last, I would say, few years, they didn't happen overnight. It's not like the bad actors came in, took all the data and walked away overnight. It never almost happens like that. They don't understand your network. They don't know how it is set up. They don't know where the data resides. They don't know what valuable data is that you have. So they have to do recon for some time. They are in your environment for months, hiding in plain sight. And that's the precious amount of time that organizations lose. So what we look at from a Dell perspective is that if we can get telemetry, not just what you see at the data and application layer, but also below the operating system layer at the BIOS firmware layer, right? We work on all of that. We work on gathering valuable telemetry across all of that. And then we unify it across our tools. I talked about earlier about simplification of tools. Yes, there are going to be a set of tools. It's not possible to do it all with one tool. But how can we help simplify and streamline this so that you take all of this telemetry coming from the device itself, BIOS firmware layer, you take telemetry coming from the data and application layer, you also take telemetry coming from the network and other cloud layer, right? Because ultimately it's all connected. And you harness all of that and you look at it in a single pane of glass and you're able to identify and take action. So we have integrated our below the OS capabilities already into tools like Workspace ONE, where an IT administrator can see and take action. That is the important step we are taking towards making sure there is unification of telemetry, unification of tools, so there is better context and better threat intelligence for security organizations.
Interesting, because Usman, I'm going to come to you with a question which I ask perhaps on behalf of our audience today, is that while it is important for IT leaders, business leaders to ensure security, it is equally important for them to ensure flexibility, freedom, and experience. And I speak as a user. And I use these two words, ensure and ensure, in a very considered fashion. How, in your overall partnership with Dell Technologies as well as independently with Workspace ONE, uh, do you kind of mesh this together or help organizations mesh this together such that it is almost there and doesn't have to be differentiated? Usman, if you could take a stab at this, I'm going to come to JRB after this on the same question.
So if you have a very fixed kind of a workload, it's very easy to lock down, your endpoints, just restrict people to do what they're supposed to do. But in today's world, as we've seen, people are using their own personal laptops in a lot of cases. Organizations are not ready, for a distributed environment. They've been suddenly pushed into it. And you actually cannot have a very restricted workspace. It stifles innovation. There are new technologies, new kinds of development environments that are coming up. People are sharing code using public access, public uh, code. For example, they just download things from the internet, and you have to allow them to do that in order to really support innovation in a way.
No, that's
So
very, very interesting. Because Jeremy, I want to bring the same question to you. How do you give me the experience? How do you ensure experience while ensuring, or rather, how do you help organizations do that?
Absolutely. We think about it a lot because, even a few years ago, there was a survey I remember reading, and it said in many organizations, unfortunately, IT organizations are forced to make a choice between security and productivity. That used to be a debate a few years ago, quite a lot. And we looked at, why should it be that way, right? So it cannot be like, okay, I either have fantastic security or I open my users up to freedom and productivity. Even as the debate was happening, the way the work was evolving, modern work and people using a lot of cloud application, accessing data from anywhere, any place, on any device, that kind of propelled a mission across cybersecurity organizations to solve the problem and look at it differently, right? And the most fundamental thing is comes back to the point that we made earlier in a previous question around the tooling and how do you make it simple and easy for users. Now, building more resiliency and automation by itself solves a lot of that problem, right? The more things you're going to require IT to do or users to do is going to add more complexity and friction to the process. What ends up happening as a result of that is security becomes an impediment. What we want it to be instead is an enabler. And for security to become an enabler, we need to make sure that there are not too many conflicting tools. You're not requiring users to take a lot of actions by themselves. You're applying policies that are dynamic, right? For example, if you have a data protection policy in place, you cannot have one data protection policy uniformly across every one of your departments and every employee. You have a marketing department that has a different needs. You have a finance department that has a different needs.
If I could interject, therefore, would you therefore, in the ongoing debate on endpoint security as well as cyber resilience, also feel that zero trust perhaps is the starting point of a lot of the frameworks or the paradigms that one would adopt as an organization?
Absolutely. Zero trust is becoming more and more important. But you have to look at it. There's a little bit of a paradox here in the sense that zero trust inherently means that you don't trust anything. You always check. You have step up authentication. You challenge people to make sure that they are who they say they are before they access data and applications. Right. There's one part of it. But again, it has to be seamless and frictionless. And I think the industry is evolving towards it, which is very positive. At the same time, you can also think about it as, okay, can we put more power? And I made this comment earlier, right? Security is not the responsibility of security organization. It's the responsibility of everybody. But how do you do that? How do you build more automation? Things like if then rules. If this happens, do this, right? So depending on an organization construct, depending on their risk profile, IT can configure systems using tools like Workspace ONE and many other tools we have to automate and orchestrate. So that we know that, okay, if in my organization context, if this happens, I don't want it to happen, do this, take this action, right? So you're reducing, putting a lot of onus on end user to take action every time. It's all frictionless and seamless running in the background, and they're able to go and work the way they want to work. But that requires a re-architect and rethink of your solution versus just, okay, I'm going to, today the industry deals with it. Okay, I have an email problem, I'm going to put an email solution. I have a VPN problem, I have a ransomware problem, I have a malware problem. So you're kind of adding and bolting on solutions, right? How do you rethink the architecture? Again, resiliency comes back into that. So you're doing a lot of that inherently to how you set your infrastructure up.
That's fascinating, gentlemen. But I do have a view on the clock, and we are winding down to perhaps the last odd question that I do have for you. Usman, I'm going to come to you. And given your wide experience, Usman, and given the wide visibility that you have in the spectrum of Indian industry, as the tenets of the future of work emerge, how is VMware, independently as well as in your partnership with Dell Technologies, constantly perhaps innovating such that Indian industry's ability to march forward in a more confident and resilient manner is only accelerated over the next 6, 12, 24 months, which is the immediacy of the future. How would you respond to that? What is the innovation that one can expect from the VMware stables?
So I think one of the biggest innovations that we are doing is bringing in AI and ML to actually look at the telemetry coming from these endpoints, trying to understand what is normal, what is not normal, and give immediate visibility and actionable insights to the security teams. And at the same time, it's absolutely important to have a full recording or sort of CCTV camera over all the activities that are happening. As Balaji mentioned a bit earlier, attackers don't come into the environment and do what they have to do in a matter of hours or days, right? It's several months. So by the time you discover something wrong is happening, you need to have the visibility, the ability to actually go back and do retrospective analysis, see what all changes they've done to the environment, so that then you can do a proper cleanup and undoing of whatever has happened. So that's again a very important. So at one point you need to protect yourself from getting infected in the first place or getting breached in the first place, and then you need to have the ability to do retrospective analysis and recover from whatever damage that has happened. That's absolutely important part of the.
Fascinating, really.
Yeah.
Jeremy, in conclusion, again, similar question. What's the big bet with regards to and with reference to endpoint security and cyber resilience by itself that Dell is focusing on over the next 12 to 14 to 16 months? That, well, what can one expect from your digital labs that is truly going to be transformative for organizations to forge a very resilient, confident path ahead?
Absolutely. We talked about it a little bit in the earlier as well. I think I would start with what Isman said about AI and ML, right? So AI and ML has been a buzzword in cybersecurity, I would say, for the past 5, 6 years. I also talk about one step ahead in terms of we have seen, right, having machines play a big role in kind of collecting a vast amount of data and telemetry. So we have something good to analyze on, right? There's also a human element to all this, right? So we talk about the industry. Industry does have a shortage of cybersecurity professionals, and it's trying to deal with it in its own way. Organizations like SecureWorks within Dell play a big role in being able to take all of this data, put it through the secret source of their platform that has a lot of contextual knowledge. It's important to understand that when organizations like VMware, like SecureWorks, analyze market, they're bringing to bear the power of the contextual knowledge that they have not from one customer but from thousands of customers. They are monitoring and actively tracking more than 200 threat groups across the world. They are analyzing their modus operandi, how they operate, what do they go after, their style. All that is analyzed, and all of that human intelligence is also fed into our platform so that there is more context, richer context to look at that. You can expect that to continue to improve and be brought to bear with all these integrations we are doing. So that's one thing you can expect from Dell. The other thing you can expect from Dell, as I said a little earlier, is that an integration of all of these different layers of telemetry into some sort of a unifying way. I wouldn't say there's one platform that will do it all. I don't think we are there yet in the near future, but we are definitely going down that path. What I mean by that is, as time progresses, we'll see more and more integration of tools across the endpoint layers, starting from firmware, BIOS, including supply chain, which is also very important today, all the way to the data and application layer. How do you take telemetry from all of this, integrate it across tools, and provide better context to customers? And where can we do automation patching? Like just patching alone can solve probably half the security problems. Organizations cannot do that effectively for various reasons. So we are looking at all of that and trying to make it more and more cohesive as we move forward.
That is nothing short of brilliant, gentlemen. But that pretty much is what we have time for in this segment, in this episode of the Digital Dialogues. Usman, GRB, it has been fantastic speaking to you. And we stand collectively much the better for having heard your very rich views and, of course, the innovation that's going to come out of your digital stables. Ladies and gentlemen, that pretty much was what we had time for. Thank you, Usman. Thank you, GRB. It was lovely speaking with you.
That was truly insightful. Thank you, Arjun and solution experts, for sharing your valuable views and guidance. Dear delegates, that's all we have for you. We hope you enjoyed the third and final episode of Strateging's Digital Dialogue Season 5 that we brought you today. Please do take a minute to fill out and submit your feedback form. On behalf of Strateging, Dell Technologies, Intel, and VMware, we thank you for attending and our panelists and speakers for enriching us with their experiences and expert insights on digital transformation challenges and opportunities. Take care, stay safe. This is Ushma Tyagi signing off on behalf of Strateging Solutions.